Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Hey, race fans, welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network. Welcome to the Drafting the Circus program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this past week in racing and racing news and preview next week. Joining me in the studio, as always, Luis Torres and Richard Youden. What's happening, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Still recovering from a mosh pit concert.
Yeah, we'll have to save that for a different podcast. Yeah. So Formula One was in action in Saudi Arabia for the first time at the Jeddah circuit. Coming out of the race, again, it was another win for Lewis Hamilton, a second place for Max Verstappen. So we've got our title rivals coming out of Saudi Arabia, dead even in points going into the finale, which means it's pretty easy to see who's going to be the champion. It'll be the guy that finishes ahead of the other guy. And if both guys finish outside the points, Max Verstappen wins the tiebreaker, which is, led some people to wonder if we'll see a Prost Senna kind of moment. But I don't think we're going to see anything that wicked this day and age. However, this particular race did have a lot of controversial moments surrounding, both in practice and qualifying and during the race. Some discrepancies with penalties. We had some harsh criticism about parts of the circuit and some blind corners and safety concerns. So we'll try to dig into all that. But first off, Richard, let's talk about the action on the track and the racing weekend itself.
Yeah, it's a shame we've only got an hour, really. This could probably take up a couple of shows. But first time at a new circuit, another new circuit. And there was a lot of concern going into it. I think, as you mentioned, it's a street circuit, very tight walled circuit, and it's a very fast circuit as well. Almost a little bit like Baku in a way, with a very fast last couple of sectors there. But in Baku, they're pretty much dead straight with some very small kinks. These are fast flowing corners. And, a number of drivers had mentioned that, they're basically flat out in those sections. So it's almost like a straight, but they're blind, they've got two or three left-hand sort of flicks, if you like, flat out. So if anything did go wrong ahead of them, they have zero visibility and zero chance to avoid the accident. But, as a one, if you like, as like a time trial circuit, the place was amazing. It was seeing the drivers on the edge, pushing themselves to the limit. So qualifying was fantastic. Again, Hamilton and Verstappen pushing each other to the limit. And, going into Q3 on the Saturday afternoon, Hamilton had the edge with sort of Max left with one lap to go. And Max was ahead of Lewis by probably 0.2 of a second coming into the final corner, and locked his inside front left going into the final corner, and he didn't really back out of it, kept his foot in, and the back end stepped out, and he caught the wall coming out the final corner, and didn't complete his lap there, which didn't demote him, but didn't advance him up the grid, and he would be starting the race in third. So devastating blow for Verstappen in many ways. Probably had huge ramifications from the rest of the weekend, from that point onwards, from a confidence level and from a pure track position level. And we talked about this on the show. When was the last time in a race or qualifying that Hamilton made a mistake of his own that resulted in him either not finishing or crashing or whatever it may be? And you're going back almost to his McLaren days. You know, I was really struggling to think of a critical individual mistake that he's made and taken, you know, and crashed out while he's been with Mercedes. Obviously, there's been a few incidences, but there's two drivers been involved in those often. But you know, Max made the mistake, and it did prove pretty costly. And you know, we'd seen in the support races that weekend, there was lots of incidents, lots of red flags, a lot of safety cars. So it was pretty well established that we were going to see some incidents throughout the race. And in all fairness, it was a pretty clean start. You know, on the first start of the race there, and Hamilton was ahead, Bottas was second, I think, and then Verstappen third, and they sort of held position for a good number of laps at the start of the race. And everybody was pretty well behaved, if you like. And then Mick sort of span off, and Mick Schumacher span and hit the wall pretty hard. Jeddah's one of those circuits where you don't have little accidents. You know, if you feel like Indianapolis in some ways, you know, if you have an off at Indianapolis, you know about it. The same way with Jeddah. If you have an off there, you're going to know about it. And it gave them, you know, I think they ran around for sort of 3 or 4 laps under the safety car, and the Mercedes, you know, pitted Hamilton and Bottas. And there was a lot, that was the first point of the race where I thought that there was some shenanigans going on, should we say. Bottas really, really backed Verstappen up, really backed him up. Not only to give him, you know, obviously Bottas, the Mercedes cars were going to double stack with Verstappen and Bottas, but sorry, with Hamilton and Bottas. But, you know, so that's why he wanted to create a gap, but you only need to create really about a 5 or 6 second gap. And that wouldn't have been that hard on the safety car, but be interesting to see what the timing was. It was probably near a 10 or 15 second gap. And obviously Bottas was either doing that under his own, own doing there, or the team were telling him to back him up as much as possible. And that was a little bit, I didn't think that was quite right. But Verstappen stayed out. He did the opposite to Mercedes, so he stayed out on the tyres. And then just after the decision to pit and not pit were made, the stewards threw the red flag, which obviously all the cars go about pit lane, and under the red flag rules, drivers can change tyres without penalty. So Verstappen had gained the track position with Hamilton and Bottas pitting, and then he was given the opportunity to change tyres basically free of charge. Now, the reason they do that, from my understanding, is that the concept and the notion is that when there's a red flag, it's because there's an accident and potentially debris on the track. And they give the opportunity to the drivers to change tyres under the red flag in case they have damage to the tyre. So it's a little bit of a, in all fairness, it was unfair on the Mercedes. They'd made the call to pit, and Verstappen had stood out, and then Verstappen gets a free tyre change.
Yeah, there were a few other drivers that were vocal. I want to say,
Lando Norris.
I want to say vocal. Mick Schumacher had mentioned that as well. That they need to kind of change that, because essentially any benefit you got from pitting when you pitted is gone, because everybody gets a free tire change.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. It's a difficult one because the justification for allowing that tire change in the red flag is one of safety. And what would happen if somebody did get a slow puncture, they didn't detect it, and then they had to change tires on the formation lap or whatever, and went straight to the back of the back of the pack when it was caused by debris from another car into a red flag. It's something that I think needs to be looked at somewhere and found a middle ground there. But coming into what we call the second start of the race, Hamilton had a great start compared to Verstappen, and Verstappen. Partially, Hamilton was very, very slow on the lap to the grid. They sort of formation lap for I guess they call it a safety car restart lap, not a formation lap. So again, Verstappen was complaining that, hey, look, Hamilton's like way behind me here, so I've got to sit on the grid for a lot longer than I'd like to. Tires would cool, and it affected his start. Now, whether maybe that was the cause that Verstappen had a bad start and Hamilton had a good start, I'm not particularly certain, but Hamilton got ahead of Verstappen and then going into turn one, it all got a little bit sort of elbows, got out, and Verstappen cut the corner a little bit, backed up Hamilton, and Ocon managed to get past Hamilton. And then further back in the pack, I think it's Perez and Leclerc got together. Russell sort of spanned, trying to avoid Perez, and then Mazepin went into the back of into the back of Russell, I think it was. So he had 3 or 4 cars out all there, in one go. And again, we had another red flag. But this is where it started to get a little bit sort of messy with the stewards. They deemed that Verstappen had gained an advantage by cutting the corner at turn 2, but of course they'd red flagged it, so he couldn't let Hamilton pass. So it was like, well, we need you to start in P3 behind Hamilton with Ocon starting on pole. So it was all, it was just all a little bit messy. And,
weren't they like trying to negotiate with hey, we'll do this, it's almost like, let's make a deal.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to penalize you, Max, but let's figure out a way to make it so it hurts you too bad.
Now, in all fairness, a lot of people on social media on a lot of other platforms saying, "Oh, this is ridiculous." Now, I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty certain this is sort of stuff's been going on for a number of years. The only reason we're sort of visual of it now is that we have that team to FIA radio, and we hear Toto and the team managers of Red Bull and Mercedes and these sort of guys, Ron Meadows and guys like that, sort of talking to the FIA and trying to get sway the decision in their favor, sort of thing. They're almost like lawyers, really, in many ways. But
meanwhile, Esteban Ocon and Alpine are just like having a sip of coffee, like waiting.
Yeah, they're sat there doing their thing, which was, hey, have at it, boys.
As long as we're P1, it was all fine by me.
Yeah, but then, so then we eventually had a third start to the race. And, Verstappen was in a position where he was leading from Hamilton, and Ocon sort of dropped back as you expect, and it all sort of sat there status quo a little bit for a while. And, Hamilton started to push Verstappen quite hard there and managed to get in the DRS zones a couple of times. And they got pretty close, I think probably going down into turn 1 and turn 2 there. And Verstappen, arguably left the track and gained an advantage by keeping Hamilton behind him. And either Red Bull or the FIA, the timings of all this is key, turned around and said, look, you need to let Hamilton through. And then while the FIA were in the position to try and tell Mercedes, Verstappen is going to let you through, on the back straight there, Verstappen was slowing down to allow Hamilton through. Now, the reason he picked that part of the circuit was that he would have got DRS assistance off Hamilton and probably been able to pass him back down into turn 1 again. So Verstappen was played the game. He's like, okay, I'm going to let you back through here, but now I'm going to get the DRS activation and I'm going to be able to pass you again going down into turn 1. But all the timing of this was so critical. Hamilton never got he didn't get the memo. And he's suddenly confronted, normally where you're doing 300 and something plus K, a Mercedes doing 150K and he's right in front of him. And, what do I do? Where do I go? There was a lot of confusion there. And then they ended up touching Hamilton. Almost basically ran into the back of Verstappen. And the fact that both drivers were able to continue was phenomenal, really.
Yeah, I thought, Lewis was headed for a new front wing after
that.
But
I was amazed that he didn't lose the suspension altogether. A corner didn't get ripped off. And obviously Hamilton was like, "Well, he brake checked me." Verstappen was like, "Well, I tried to let him through, and he didn't." In all fairness, you look on the replays, there was plenty of room either side of Verstappen for Hamilton to make that pass. But obviously, he didn't get the didn't get the memo, and it was, a little bit disjointed.
To Lewis's credit, had he known that he was going to get a position back, he wouldn't have it. He would have expected Verstappen to slow down. But then again, the other thing is, like, if you want the guy to go by, right? Verstappen is, dead in the middle of the track. Why wouldn't he move to one side or the other to give him? And again, to your point, there was plenty of room on either side, but why not just go ahead and because that's kind of like, let me move over. That's almost a gesture instead of just lifting off the gas or perhaps applying the brake. The FIA would have telemetry to know whether or not he applied the brake. So
there is some video showing it now. Again, it's he did apply the brake, and I'm sure because again his priority there wasn't to let Hamilton through; it was to let him through and be able to repass him. Rather than just, through you go. Oh crap, you got ahead of me now. It's okay, let you through now. I'm going to get back ahead of you within the letter of the law. So anyway, the race carried on, and Verstappen was ahead of Hamilton, but I think Verstappen actually probably had more damage to his diffuser than Hamilton had to his front wing. They were making all this thing about Hamilton's front wing, and he did have an end plate that was leaning over. But we've seen in the past these end plates. A driver can drive around an end plate being missing because that just affects the balance of the car, and the car will pull a little bit under braking or what have you when there's load on there because it's not perfectly symmetrical. But again, a world-class driver like Hamilton or any of the guys out there, they can drive through that, and we've seen
they can
numerous fastest laps.
They can make adjustments for that. Yeah, and again, there are so many aerodynamic components on the front wing. If you lose one or two, you still got all the others.
Yeah, But with a damaged diffuser, you're going to really struggle. So, I firmly believe actually in some ways that Verstappen was probably more hampered by the damage than Hamilton was. So Hamilton was able to get past Verstappen. They had a little bit of toing and froing there, but Max was able to, good grief. Hamilton was able to pull away and win the race reasonably comfortably. And post-race, Verstappen ended it with a 15-second penalty, 5 seconds for gaining leaving the track and gaining an advantage, which I think was on the second restart. And then he also got a 10-second penalty, I think, for the avoidable contact with Hamilton when he was trying to let him pass. But it certainly highlighted a lot of issues, and the rate at which the speed of the sport is increasing in terms of decision making compared to the speed of the sport with which the stewards are able to make decisions and relay that information and do what they need to do. And it's just the nature of what it is. You've got close, hard racing, and unfortunately, these guys don't police themselves. You do rely on stewards, and you do rely on individuals that make these calls, and potentially they're championship deciding decisions. So it's not an easy job. That's for sure. But,
and combined with the fact that there are so many variables of what can happen in any given situation, it's hard to have a hard and fast rule that will apply to every situation. Improving your position. What exactly is improving your position?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's quite clear. Sometimes it's a little muddy.
You pass somebody off track, or you don't lose a position off track, sort of thing.
Right.
But I think there's two big things we've got to look at here in many ways. One of them is period the track layouts. Basically the only thing that defines the tracks on a lot of these circuits is a line of paint. Gone are the days of gravel runoffs and catch fencing and stuff like that.
The black forest.
Yeah, we don't want to go back to the 80s where you have like 5-10 rows of catch fences that are in the gravel. Or especially hay. No, we don't want hay.
No.
Hay bales, we don't want or we don't want trees or the harbor
lakes.
or highway guardrails that won't protect the driver's head, like a couple of people at Watkins Glen.
Yeah. But no, you're right. But I think that we need to look at penalizing drivers in the moment for leaving the track, rather than having to, be in a position where they can maintain or gain an advantage by leaving the track. But then again, it's difficult because you can argue, what happens if somebody's forced off the track and they get, a wing knocked off or a wheel knocked off, or, go through the gravel when it's not their fault? Well, that's, probably the lesser of two evils here, I think. I think we really need to go back and look quite closely at how we design these tracks and, how we put ourselves in a position whereby the driver is penalized on the spot for leaving the track.
Exactly. You can't do, you can't really take your time with it. It's, gone are the days when we'll say, well, the results will be official Monday morning.
Exactly.
And you have a surprise the next day. And
you need to know within a lap almost, because the race is so fast and things are changing in real time.
Oh yeah. But by the time you tell a guy to give a position back, the other guy might be 10 seconds up the road.
It's like the old TV show 24, isn't it? All events happen in real time, and it is. You don't have time to sort of really sit down and think about it, especially when it has potentially such huge ramifications on the championship. So they are. It's a very, very difficult job, but I think they need to look at how they design the circuits and how they do that, which will make the job easier for these guys and easier for the stewards, because it's undoubtedly a thankless task. You're going against the world's best drivers who know every trick in the book and can push it to the extremes. And it's difficult. It really is. There's no golden answer to this one. It's going to take time.
No matter what you decide, the other guy's not going to be happy.
Exactly.
Or the fans of the other guys. So, but the other thing I wanted to talk about beyond all the penalties, there were I read a couple of things from some folks who felt that another thing along with the diffuser that really hampered Verstappen was the curious choice to run the entire race on medium tires.
Well, you have to have changed the tire compounds at some point during the race, weren't they?
Or he took mediums at the wrong time. I don't know. I don't know if somebody was trying to overanalyze it or whatnot. But
there was a time period where they did that. Yeah. So there was that point where they had got that free tire change under the first safety car. They were allowed to change that. And actually, I must admit, the race was so hectic, I wasn't able to keep track of at what point, the Red Bulls actually did change tire compound. I'd have to look at the pit stop charts to see when they went on from mediums to hards, because unless they started the race on hards, which maybe they did, but then that would have meant the Mercedes started on soft. I don't know. I'd have to have a look at that. It's an interesting point, but
it's kind of hard to believe we're talking about pit stops almost as an afterthought with these red flags and that rule. At this moment, to be honest with you, I feel like repairing the cars one thing, but tires kind of, I don't know. I'm not on the favorable side on changing tires under red, but
also you got to consider sometimes it could be weather conditions as well. You could have
aside for
downpour.
Weather,
but again, it's that's a grey area. Whose call is that, and who makes that decision?
That is very true. And also just to talk about the pace, the safety car needed to get going for tire grip. It's like people don't realize that's not a new thing. It's been a thing for many, many years. I mean, you want to go back to 94.
Yeah, exactly. Imola. Yeah. No, for sure.
When Angelelli as the driver was going real slow.
Yeah, it's not easy. Oh goodness me. No. It is not easy. And to a certain extent, they've got to go, as they did mention during the broadcast, they've got to go slow to give the time for the track workers or whoever it is to, you got to give them a couple of minutes without cars driving past them to make the changes and make the track safe from the point where they were dealing with the specific incident. So I think that's something that's the same for everybody. And I think they've just got to accept it. I just think it's one of those things that the drivers like to bitch about for the sake of bitching about it. Now, what you could arguably do is have a situation where, once the safety car leaves, maybe have another lap where they can, go at 80% speed rather than the 40% like you have on a virtual safety car or whatever it is. Allow the lead car to be the safety car and drive at a faster speed, but allow them to, get the temperatures back in the tires and the brakes and the pressures correct and all that sort of stuff. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I've just come up with an amazing idea and I need to give Stefano Domenicali a call and, pitch that one to him.
Yeah, give it a shot. Yeah, can't hurt there.
You've got his number, haven't you, Frank?
Yeah, him and I text all the time.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the other folks in the race here.
Mm-hmm.
Again, good run for Ocon in the Alpine.
Yeah, he just pipped on the line there by Bottas. So,
yep.
So the combination of Bottas, Verstappen, and Hamilton is now the most common podium in Formula One. I think they've shared a podium 20 times between them. All three of them on a podium in different positions, which is quite an incredible
stat. Yeah, well, I mean,
really,
and Max hasn't even been around that long. When you consider.
I mean, he's been. 7 seasons of Formula One. Yeah, he hasn't been there quite long. As far though, but for sure, and I think when you look back at it, people will think retrospectively, maybe many people will think, okay, wait a minute, Bottas is actually in the record books for something noteworthy.
Because that's a bit harsh on the guy. I think he's a damn good driver. It's just,
there's some people
come up with
arguably.
Well, yeah, and that's ignorance, I think, from many people, who question Bottas's ability. At the end of the day, he's come up against a guy who will probably go down in the record books in our lifetime anyway. The most dominant driver in Formula One.
And he did I know we harp on the guy every now and then, but I feel like this one, some people will say, oh, he finally showed up, but that one, he did what Perez has unable to do all season long. The number 2 guy that delivers when it matters most. And with that, Bottas is third in the championship no matter what happens now.
Yeah, but Bottas, I think, in all fairness, has outperformed Perez in that number 2 role, fundamentally. If you compare you compare the two,
that race alone.
And so I think there's been a number of occasions this season where Bottas has really stepped up and, been a rival. I mean, look at Turkey, where he dominated that race. Arguably, he said at the time his best race in Formula One. The way he dominated that race, and sometimes it just clicks for the guy, and that's the difference. It's any driver, in Formula One, no matter who it is, can have their day in terms of performance, and they just get that rhythm with the circuit. Some circuits just suit them. Bottas is, Sochi's Bottas's circuit in many ways. It just suits his eye, and it fits into the way he likes to drive. And you've seen his performances there have been dominant at times. But that's the big difference. Guys like Hamilton and Verstappen and Schumacher and some of these guys, they can win on a bad day. If Bottas has a bad day, he's 4th or 5th. If Hamilton has a bad day, he can still win the race because his level is so much higher than everybody else's. And we're, again, we talked about it. We're very fortunate to have these 2 guys out there that are pushing each other to some incredible levels of performance. And, you see at the start of the race when Hamilton and Verstappen get out there, they're riding, P1, P2. They can be a second and a half, 2 seconds a lap faster than anybody else, and they just stretch it, at a phenomenal rate because they're both of them are just on another level. Amazing.
Because just look no farther than the fact that Verstappen was given a 15-second penalty post race and didn't lose second place because him and Lewis were that far clear of the rest.
And it was
the rest of them.
it was only just over a half distance race because, on lap 15 or so, or 20, whenever it was, there was a restart. So, that you started at 0, not on lap 1, on lap 15 or whenever that restart or the third start was.
Yeah. So, and those guys are making incredible amounts of ground. So, yeah, again, this is
and they hit each other.
And they hit each other. Yeah, for the third time this year, thankfully.
Yeah.
Fortunately, both of them were still running at the end, not both out or one, or the one out and one remaining.
Yeah,
so they've gotten better about hitting each other without consequences.
They've gotten better at hitting each other. That's a quote for the record books there. I like that.
Much to the chagrin of Toto's Bose headphones and Christian Horner's chagrin. No, it's literally trending on Twitter every now and then. They just started calling Christian as a Karen because of how he just how he is. But
yeah.
Sometimes it's one of those can you blame him moments, and there's others like, yeah, we've heard enough of you. Just
stop. Yeah. So this leads to a very daunting task for both of these guys coming into the next race in Abu Dhabi. Is that this coming weekend, or do we have a week off?
Yeah, it's this weekend.
All right. So this weekend we're going to Abu Dhabi, and essentially whoever finishes ahead of the other guy is the world champion.
Yep.
I've got to put the advantage in Lewis's hands because, well, number one, he's been there before. 7 times he's come successful at winning the championship. He's been really on his game this last stretch of races here. He's won the last 3 or 4?
Last 3, I think. Yeah,
last 3. Yeah. But, so he's got the momentum on his side.
He only won last 2, but yeah, he's dominated those last 2.
Yeah. So, you gotta, and he's seemed to have the upper hand in qualifying recently as well. It just seems like whatever Mercedes is doing, where it looked like earlier in the season Red Bull had the better car. I think that Mercedes has tipped that scale back in their favor.
Yeah.
So, but again, Max is when Max is on, he's on. So, and I think this is going to be, and a lot of people are worried that we're going to have a moment where the two take each other out, or where Max tries to deliberately take Hamilton out, or one of the other Red Bull hired guns, being the 2 AlphaTauri drivers and Perez, try to take Hamilton out, which
Roberto Fontana has slowed him down.
Well, that's one thing, slowing him down. Taking him out is another. You know what I mean? And I can't see that happening intentionally this day and age, because it'll put such a black mark on Verstappen's first championship. This day and age where people are so quick to criticize, and everybody in the world has a voice now thanks to social media. You say, because there have been sketchy moments with Prost and Senna. There have been sketchy moments with was it Schumacher and Villeneuve? Schumacher Hill. Yep. So there have been sketchy moments with Fangio back in the 50s, where he just say if this guy doesn't finish, I don't have to win. So. But I don't.
Schumacher, Alonso, or Rosberg, Hamilton.
Yeah, but I don't see that happening this day and age. I think Red Bull will want to win it fair and square. I think Max Verstappen will want to win it fair and square. And I can't imagine a scenario where let's take Hamilton out comes up in their game plan. But
I'd be very surprised.
Maybe that's just me being optimist. But I don't see that happening. But again, I do lean towards advantage Lewis.
And my scenario,
yes,
I think you're right in that regard. Even though even though Verstappen is entering that race as the defending Grand Prix winner at Abu Dhabi because he won the finale, but that whole circumstance was so different because Hamilton had already locked up the championship. So maybe at 100% he wasn't going for it. Where in this race you have to go 100%. and the odds for Verstappen winning the championship is in his favor. Should both of them have problems, because he owns the tiebreaker 9-8. For Hamilton to win a championship, he clearly has to beat Verstappen no matter what. But I think he has a good chance. But like you guys have said, Mercedes just have the advantage. I think Hamilton pulls the rally and gets that 8th championship. And I see that as a Mercedes sweep. But just this in mind, should Verstappen win the world championship, but Mercedes lock up the constructors, which is pretty much all but locked up at this point. 2008 was the last time we saw 2 different champions, correct?
Sounds about right.
I believe so. Yeah, that was when
Ferrari
won Ferrari won the constructors championship and Hamilton won the drivers championship.
So yeah, it's been a grand while since we saw 2 different champions, and there's a very good chance it'll happen. But will it? I don't think so. I think Hamilton pulls it off. They just have the momentum in their favor right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it happens that neither guy score points and we end on the tie,
Verstappen wins it 9-8.
Verstappen wins it 9-8, but you got to consider that Spa win is garbage. You know what I mean? That's just an asterisk in my mind. That the Spa race was not really a race. You know. And I know they only were given half points, but he's given full credit for a win when it comes to the tiebreaker. So
it's basically how you qualify that reward. That I think people can agree. Yeah. George Russell podium, it's a good consolation reward for having a strong qualifying effort that some people thought should have won pole, but he was just outbeaten pace wise. But we'll never know. But it's in the books. But apparently, one red flag isn't in the record books all of a sudden.
Oh, so yeah. But thankfully, I think the odds of both guys finishing out of the points are astronomical. So I don't think we'll see it.
I hope it doesn't.
Ending on the tiebreaker. Yeah. So
because if it does happen, if it's like deliberate or not, then you got to think, what will the FIA do? Because they were quick on disqualifying Michael in 97. Will they do something similar? I hope it does not come down to that. I really hope, because this has been a phenomenal season. And with the events that's happened this past race in Jeddah, it's kind of teeter-tottering in a way. There was like, there's some blemishes. Or there's just part of the mind games that bring some blemishes, some sort of opinions on on some people.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, again, I think all that is just idle talk. I think we'll have I don't want to say we'll have a clean race, but I don't think we'll see a dirty race. We might see a little wheel banging, but just in the spirit of trying to overtake, not in the spirit of trying to take somebody out. So Richard, what's your thought on the outcome of the championship?
Yeah. I mean, this is it's so close, isn't it? I mean, you couldn't put a cigarette paper between them, really, could you? I think that when you look at it, I think you'd have to put the advantage and momentum and experiences certainly in Hamilton's corner. But then there's been races this year where you would have expected, how Hamilton or Verstappen to have struggled, and they've turned around and won the race. So I think there's certainly, it could go either way. But as I think if you're putting your logical hat on, I think you've got to say Hamilton. I think if you're talking from your heart, you'd probably love to see Verstappen win, because the guy's been phenomenal this year at times. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I think, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we'll just have to watch the race on Sunday and see, right?
Indeed.
I wonder what the Vegas odds makers are putting the.
I think Hamilton would probably be slight favorite. I will find out for you.
Okay, and not that I'm putting any money on the race.
No.
Because
not that we're providing any gambling, advice.
Yeah. So while Richard's looking that up, let's talk about some of the other news around the racing world. We had Indycars testing in Sebring, and we had 4 guys that are coming out of Europe, all in Indycars this weekend. We had Callum Ilott, who was locked in to drive for Juncos Hollister next year, or Hollinger. And they reveal their new livery, which is it's a very nice white, black, and green livery, although it is devoid of a primary sponsor. But again, my understanding is that Mr. Hollinger has plenty of money for now, but I do hope that they find a partner to come on board, because that'll make things easier. So Callum was in there. Nick DeVries, the reigning Formula E champion, was there behind the wheel of the Michael Shank car, and for his part, he was the fastest of the four. He said he enjoyed the car, enjoyed the challenge of the car. Now, we do know that Nick is contracted for one more year in Formula E. Of course, the Formula E season ends in August, which literally opens him up for some Indycar starts in somebody's third car, should they decide to enter one in the later portions of the season. And, we've seen that before. And Michael Shank is kind of open. He hasn't closed the door on a third car because, somebody asked, well, what are you going to do with the guy? Because Shank was quite impressed with him. He says, and Shank's exact words were, he says, I never said I wouldn't run a third car. So there you go. Stoffel Van Dorn was in the McLaren car. We do know that McLaren does want to expand to 3 cars by 2023. Stoffel is well known to the McLaren folks, having driven for them in Formula One for a while. He also really enjoyed the test, enjoyed the feel of the car, enjoyed the challenges of the car, how heavy the steering was and those sort of things that a lot of these guys that come over from Europe mention. So again, you might want to just pencil him in to perhaps make an appearance late in the season after the Formula E season ends. And then the last guy there was Jack Aiken, a British driver who's most recently running in Formula 2. He's got one Formula 1 start to his credit. I think he filled in for
George Russell for the Sakir Grand Prix.
Right.
He's a Williams test driver,
Yeah, because that's when Russell filled in for Hamilton, right?
Mm-hmm. And if I recall, no, was it Latifi who brought up the safety car that kind of led to that whole tire fiasco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't quite remember. I just was reading that I had forgotten that Aiken actually had one Formula 1 start with the Williams. So, and I didn't read a lot about his times or his experience on the thing, but he was in the Ed Carpenter car, and we do know that Ed Carpenter is searching for some funding, having lost the military sponsorship with the Air Force. They decided to go a different direction with military sponsorships. So that money's gone. Ed is actively seeking a paid driver. We can assume that Aiken's probably got some money. So that's a possibility that he winds up there. The other guy that has tested in the Carpenter car is Ryan Hunter-Reay. And the interesting note is that after the Ryan Hunter-Reay test, Ed Carpenter had mentioned he wasn't going to burn any more test days until he had something solid as far as the driver is concerned. And then, he does the total 180 here and he's testing Aiken. So this makes you wonder if there's maybe an agreement in principle already in as far as funding or not. If there is, nobody's saying so. I'm just speculating there. Because, when Ed said, I'm not going to burn any more test days until I know who's driving the car. And now suddenly we're burning a test day. There must be something more to it other than just evaluating the driver. So that's a developing story that remains to be seen. In other news,
speaking of how we talked about Sakir Grand Prix, there's something that we forgot to mention as far as the Jeddah race. Another, of course, along with Aiken and not Enzo, lead up to Enzo. I mean, Pietro Fittipaldi also drove that F1 race for Grosjean. Pietro's brother Enzo is still recovering from injuries from that rather horrific Formula 2 feature race accident where Théo Pourchaire, who was a standout in Formula 3, who actually probably had the more impressive drive in the finale where Oscar Piastri and Logan Sargent were in that title mix. His car just didn't get going. He got completely drilled by Fittipaldi. For Porsche, he looks like he's going to be okay. The timetable of whether or not he's going to run the final Grand Prix weekend is yet to be seen. But for Fittipaldi, he took a pretty good. It was not a pretty incident when you look at how bad it was for him as far as like his injuries concerns. That it must have been a pretty significantly violent impact.
Yeah, what I've read is a fractured ankle, which is something that can take quite some time to heal. And you don't want your feet and ankles to be in good shape when you're driving a race car. So
yeah,
certainly wish him well. And again, this is
not the first time we've seen it. I mean, it's similar to what happened to Pietro at Spa. It took them a while to get fully recovered as well, leg-related injury as well.
Yeah. So Enzo Fittipaldi is Emerson Fittipaldi's grandson, and his brother is Pietro Fittipaldi. And there's another Fittipaldi out there, Emo Fittipaldi, who is Emerson Fittipaldi's son. Emerson Fittipaldi has a son who's younger than his grandchildren. Emo's got that late in life boy and that kid is that yeah. And there are a lot of Fittipaldis out there, between Emerson and Wilson and a lot of them out there driving cars. But Emerson's youngest, who he calls Emo, is he's running, I think, Formula 4 this year. The kid's and that kid's got some talent too. So it's just when you think about racing families, everyone talks about the Andretti's, the Unsers and whatnot, but consider how many Fittipaldis we've seen come through, between Emerson, Wilson, Christian, Pietro, Enzo, and Emo, so I really wish a speedy recovery for Enzo.
Yep. Yeah, because it was a pretty big impact.
It was a big hit. Yeah.
We knew like the Fittipaldi was very concerning because he was the one who hit him. So, I mean, when you run over the back of someone, you don't know the extent of the injuries. I mean, you look at the one junior Formula driver from England lost his leg from it.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was that kid's name?
Billy Monger.
Billy Monger, yeah, and he's back racing, albeit with hand controls and whatnot. And I don't know how far that'll get him.
He does coverage and punditry for the UK terrestrial F1 coverage.
Channel 4, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, good on him. Yeah, but he's done some racing, and he's actually won a few races post injury. So, I mean, you got to admire that guy for going on. You kind of like, Alex Zanardi in that sense, where you just kind of don't let something that devastating keep you away from your passion. So
yeah, it's just dawned. I mean, now we're talking about. I brought up Pietro's ball injury. Christian had leg-related injuries as well at Surfers Paradise that knocked him out for half the year at kart. It's kind of a sad trend, honestly. Now the more I think about it. But
wasn't it leg injuries that ended Emerson Fittipaldi's career at Michigan?
I forget if
I think it was. Now that you say that, so the curse of the Fittipaldi legs. This is something that needs to be written about.
Because it's a sad, eerie thought that I'm just thinking about. It's like there is something. It's like Pietro at Spa, Enzo at Jeddah, Christian at Surfers Paradise, and Emo at Michigan.
All right, so let's
hope Wilson didn't have any related injuries. Finger cross on that.
Let's not talk ourselves into a conspiracy theory. Let's.
No, it's just a bad. It's just a sad, sudden trend that I'm realizing. But
So, but let's
be curious to. Yeah, we're talking about IndyCar briefly. It's curious to see. As far as the Aikens thing, it'd be interesting if he ends up going to IndyCar because that's another junior Formula driver making the jump to IndyCar.
Be another guy coming out of Europe. Yeah, because we've already got what's his name going to Rahal.
Christian Lundgaard.
Right? And Callum Ilott is going to be in the Juncos car. So,
yeah,
this seems like Formula 2 has been a nice breeding place for IndyCar drivers. Yeah, I mean, when you figure that we canceled the whole Indy Lights season last year, so we didn't have any Indy Lights graduates in 2021. So you've got some of these other guys coming out, but Indy Lights 2021 had a season. Kyle Kirkwood is going to be driving at least
for Foyt the whole year.
Yep, you got a full-time deal with Foyt alongside Dalton Kellett, who's just been confirmed full-time in that car, which is nice for AJ because Kellett is fully funded with the K-Line sponsorship, so they'll be on board again. This will be third season for Dalton, and see if he can improve, see if the team can improve. So let's talk about, we got a few minutes left. We've got about 15 minutes left. So let's talk about some changes in NASCAR, which there was the big story this week is that Richard Petty has sold the majority interest of Petty Enterprises to, what's it called? CG? No, it's not.
GMS.
Yeah, I got confused. We were talking about Ganassi earlier today. Yeah, so it's called Petty GMS Racing now. Their drivers will be Eric Jones and Ty Dillon will be in those two cars. The cars will be numbered 42 and 43. If you recall, 42 was an old Petty number, then was a Sabatis number, then it was most recently a Chip Ganassi number. And of course, with Chip selling his team off at the end of last year, that number is available. So we'll have the 42 and 43 Petty cars. And Petty is himself, while he's not going to be fully active with the team, he's still considered a director, I believe is what I read. Does that sound right?
Good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because there was some early talk that he would be totally disassociated with the team and his name would be removed, but it turns out that's not the case. It's going to be the Petty name is still going to be there. The Petty numbers will still be there. But whether or not we see Richard's involvement a lot, but I mean, for what it's worth, Richard hasn't really been the majority owner for a couple of years anyway.
Oh yeah, it's been since the merger.
Days
of 2008. In fact, even at the very end of throughout the 2000s, it was kind of like a Richard and Kyle Petty effort between whether they're separate teams or all back into one. Because there used to be at one point PE2, which was Kyle Petty's side of the race team, before it just became Petty Enterprises again.
Right. Yeah. There's a bit of a muddled past, but it all kind of blends together. But so I mean, I wish them success. I mean, Eric Jones is a heck of a driver. I do like that guy quite a bit. Ty Dillon has a lot of potential. So let's see what they can do. Hopefully the merger of the two teams can only make them stronger, because now you've got you're talking about two 1-car teams merging into one 2-car team. So we've got the opportunity to share information, share data, move into one shop. So let's see how that works out for them.
Yeah, be curious to see for sure, because Ty Dillon and GMS was already established. It was going to be initially the 94 car with them as their own entity, with now Ty as the 42 and affiliated with Petty. It should be an interesting, unique dynamic between those two. And it's important to know it's going to be Petty GMS in Cup only. In the truck series, it's still going to be GMS racing with 2 trucks set to be established for next year.
Right. Well, Petty didn't have a truck team to begin with, right?
No.
So there's no need to move that name over to the truck side of the operation. No. So yeah. So, but again, Richard Petty is not totally disassociated with the team as originally reported. So, but yeah, we wish them well. And again, there were some comments from Justin. Who's the guy that bought Ganassi team? Justin Marks.
Justin Marks.
Right. Yeah. He said he made some really interesting comments about this being just the right time to, for startup teams, with everything getting set to change in the sport, with new tracks and new cars and whatnot. And he's really, really looking to make an impact this year. So I like this guy's energy and I like this guy's attitude, and I really wish him well.
No, for sure. Even before Trackhouse became a thing, he has some thought-provoking insights and thoughts on Twitter to make me think there's a good chance I would not be surprised if Marks ends up an owner at some point, and it looks like it's the perfect time. I mean, not just teams coming up, but because you're obviously going to see Hazelberg with Jacques Villeneuve involved with that team. Louis Hezema, I apologize if I butchered the name. And also you've got drivers moving up from one division to the other. It's in Todd Gilliland, who that is another news that's confirmed that Todd Gilliland will go from the Truck Series to the Cup Series with Front Row Motorsports. That very team he's competed the last 2 years in trucks. Because if Gilliland go into the Cup Series, that gives Shane Smith a ride because he was a free agent after this season from GMS. Now he'll be driving for Front Row full time in 2022, which is a nice grab, a nice ad for him. And as far as Gilliland going from trucks to Cup, I mean, with the new car, it's not the worst decision out there. Is he ready? Time will ultimately tell, because this is the 4th time in as many years Front Row has brought in a rookie to the Cup Series in one of their cars. 2019, it was Matt Tiff. He didn't last long because of health issues, so his career was cut short. Now he's obviously co-owner with BJ McLeod at Live Fast. 2020, John Hunter Nemechek. He was serviceable, but he was involved. He was incident prone a lot. Going back to the Truck Series with Kyle Busch Motorsports, which he'll be back in 2022. And then obviously Todd Gilliland replaces Anthony Alfredo, who barely finished in the top 30 in points, has had an appalling season. So the fortunate news for Gilliland is a multi-year deal. And he's also the first former West Series champion to go to Cup full-time since Brendan Gaughan in 2004. So I've been very high on Todd Gilliland for a long, long time. I'm hoping he has a pretty good rookie year, but you're talking about a rookie class that has Harrison Burton and Austin Cindric. So the task is insurmountable as far as him winning rookie of the year. But the most important thing is gaining experience. Like everybody is going to need to gain experience on this new car. So
yeah, everyone's going to need to gain. But to your point, between Harrison Burton and certainly Austin Cindric, who's in the Penske car, those guys are going to be tough to beat for Rookie of the Year honors. But
sure.
Especially when we're talking about a team that really struggled last year.
Yeah, and a quick add-on to Todd, he's felt much at home with Front Row, because if you'll remember back when he was driving for Kyle Busch, they weren't certainly not having cookies at meetings like what Rick Hendrick would do when there's a conflict going on. To the point that obviously when I was responsible for in bringing up the comments about what Todd said to Kyle Busch about the motorhome thing that kind of blew up for a night or two. So going to Front Row, which his dad David was throughout his Cup career, he felt like he's more accepted and belonging. He's actually gotten better he actually been improving over time. In fact, had he won Phoenix, he would have given Front Row Motorsports the Truck Series Owners Championship. So they see something in him. We'll see if going to Cup will be more adaptive, because some drivers just do well in trucks. Some just don't have an act for trucks, but do better in the fully fledged stock cars, like Harrison Burton. When he went to Xfinity the past couple of years, he showcased why people thought highly of him, whereas the trucks, he was just mediocre at best.
Yeah, I always find that odd, because you think that underneath the body, the truck and the Xfinity car are quite similar, but really, like to your point, there are guys that really excel in the trucks that don't do much elsewhere, and there are guys that struggle in the trucks that once they get to the car bodies do well. And I don't really have an explanation for that,
Or sometimes they just feel like they're ready, or they feel like there's just the opportunity is there, is just give them a shot. And sometimes, like with Kurt Busch, when he went from trucks to straight to Winston Cup, sure, his rookie year was an absolute dumpster fire of an experiment, like every rookie not named Kevin Harvick had in 2001. but they felt like he was ready for the task to go to Cup. I'm curious because I've heard also that the front row was thought of getting another driver, but that kind of fell through. But they ultimately went with Todd, who's kind of familiar with the team. And it's a new car, is not the worst feeling in the world to go to Cup after being in the Truck Series the past number of years.
Right. So, well, with that being said, we are at the end of our hour. So, Richard, do you have anything to add before we get off the air?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then I will thank you both, Louise and Richard. I will thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. And I'll thank you folks that listen to us week in and week out. Join us next week when we will tell you who the Formula One champion is and have a full rundown from Abu Dhabi. And then after that, we'll probably have one more show to recap the year. Then we'll take our winter break. And then we'll see you.
I'm so looking forward to that one because he's got one more race for Mick Schumacher to get that point.
So hold your breath.
Yes. All right. So anyway, so we are out of time. So until next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.